Welcome back. We have now managed to reconnect with Mr. Jauch, who is the Economic and Social Justice Trust chairperson, to talk to us about the Shoprite workers that are striking. Mr. Jauch, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you very clearly.
All right, I can also hear you clearly. So can you briefly just take us through the reasons behind the trust backing of the Shoprite workers?
Yes, it started a few years ago when we were approached by Shoprite workers about the problems they had at the store, and they were suspended, and the company intended to dismiss them after a demonstration and a protest form during working hours, which the company then declared an illegal strike. We supported them to bring their plight to the attention. We called on the Ministry of Labor to intervene. And we, in the end, had a kind of a public campaign to expose Shoprite and how it treats its workers. And at the end of it all, the workers in Windhoek were taken back and did not lose their job. Few months later, then, the company recognized NAFAO as the union representing the workers, and they started negotiations to improve these very poor working conditions at the company. Unfortunately, this did not lead to any significant result. None of the core demands and issues the unions and the workers raised were met by the company. And after many, many months of negotiations in which Shoprite just didn't accommodate them, it all broke down and resulted in the strike that we're seeing right now. So our support to the workers is based on the idea that economic and social justice must be realized, and we have a duty to support them in their struggle for a wage that at least would allow them to meet their basic needs, which is currently not the case.
All right. Now, as a trade unionist, perhaps you understand the trends much better than an ordinary Namibian. What grants a national-wide strike in labor matters?
Yes, there are very clear procedures that need to be followed. And that is number one, that the majority of workers at the workplace, at the company, need to belong to a trade union, which is then becoming the recognized union. Then this union must negotiate with the employer over like wages and benefits, etc. Only when no agreement can be reached at the negotiation can the union then give notice of its intention to strike and follow the set out procedures. So it's a lengthy process, and only when all the steps have been followed is the strike what's called procedural, or what some people would call a legal strike. And this is clearly the case with Shoprite right now.
Now talk to us about what is most likely to meet the workers as they take on these necessary steps.
For workers, that now means that while they go on strike, pressurize the company, negotiations will also continue, hoping to reach a conclusion. And that is where our appeal to the general public comes in, to not leave these workers alone, to say, these are our brothers and sisters, these are our colleagues, we can identify with their conditions and how they struggle to make ends meet. And we therefore support what they call on us to do in solidarity. And this would be, in this case, to not buy from Shoprite, from Checkers, from USAFE, to increase the pressure on the company, to force them back to the negotiation table, and to finally accept some of the demands of the workers.
Now, Mr. Jauch, it's such a challenging year and many people have lost their jobs. Is there a risk that perhaps these Shoprite workers could also lose their jobs?
No, and this is the difference between what we call a protected strike, which followed all the procedures. Some people call it the legal strike. When you do that, you cannot be dismissed for going on strike. So in that sense, legally, the workers are absolutely safe. It's only when you go on a strike that didn't follow all the procedures, then the employer can call it unprotected strike and can take disciplinary action. But when you follow the procedures like they did in the case of Shoprite, they cannot be dismissed.
All right. Now we are running out of time, unfortunately, Mr. Jauch, but just shortly and quickly, how can the public support the workers during this time?
Very important to number one, send a message to Shoprite by not going there. We're not buying from them right now until they've reached a deal with its workers. Secondly, express to Shoprite in ways of letters or just at the store to say that we are appalled by the poor wages and the poor conditions under which workers have to endure, that there are still violations of their rights, and that we expect a company like Shoprite that makes million-dollar profits in Namibia to act very differently, to respect their workers, and in that way show some solidarity. We're quite aware that Shoprite workers are not the only workers suffering. And like you said, this was a very challenging year with so many people losing their jobs and livelihood. Very clearly, they are not the only ones. But we must begin to not only think of our own individual problems, we must also understand that the abuse of others is something that we must be concerned about, where we as Namibians must come out in solidarity and say, other workers that are treated like that are our brothers and sisters whom we will support in this case. We will not just close our eyes and turn our back on them. We will show some active solidarity. And in this case, it just means don't buy at Shoprite, at Checkers, at USafe, etc.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jauch. We surely do hope that the strike ends in the favor of the workers.